Good morning, good morning, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Kip Roth, and Jordana asked me to come here, thankfully, and chat with you folks a little while about the power of perspective. And I'm very grateful to be here. It's my honor. And the way I'd like this to work, because I'm new to this platform, is I really want it to be interactive because I want to get to know you folks. But I can't take questions during my presentation simply because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So if you could save them up, put them in chat, put in the Q&A. Jordana said she'd come back and rescue me at that point so we can have some interaction, which I really, really, really look forward to. So I'm an executive coach. That's one of the careers that I've had in my life. And it's a privilege to be able to serve people in that regard. Clients come to me and they ask me to help them build profitable, predictable businesses so they can have more balance in their lives. And I was thinking about it a couple of years ago. I had a first session with a client that I'll simply never forget. She asked me a question that blew my mind. And it wasn't that the question was all that powerful. It's just that nobody had ever asked it before. Nobody's ever asked it since. I've had hundreds of clients and thousands of coaching calls, and nobody ever asked me this question. And the question was very simply this. She asked me, what's the difference between your clients who fail and your clients who succeed? What's the difference between people who fail to achieve a goal and succeed at reaching a goal? And again, that's not particularly an amazing question. What's amazing about it is none of my clients who hired a coach to help them succeed ever asked the question. And I'd like to submit to you that that's the type of question you ought to have on your lips all the time, particularly during the next couple of days, because this event is packed full of resources and connections and people who can help you really zero in on what's going to move the needle the most in your transition. So here's the answer I gave that client. I said the difference between the folks who fail and the folks who succeed is very simply the people who fail are interested, while the people who succeed are committed. Now, if you're interested in something, you'll do what's convenient. But if you're committed to something, you'll do whatever it takes. And you can spot them a mile away. All right. Because the people who generally fail or don't reach their goals or don't reach their full potential or become who they could become or get what they want, they don't get that because they bargain over the price. You see, success is really simple. You identify a goal, you figure out what the price is you're going to have to pay to reach that goal, and then you pay that price. Successful people understand that, but the folks who are less successful or fail altogether out of business, they try to bargain with that price. So they'll set a goal, for example, to win the Boston Marathon. All right. But when it comes time to run in the rain or on a really hot day, somehow, that's not really convenient. And so they don't do it. All right. The second element of the answer that I gave her was this, that successful people understand that every new level of their life, every new level of their business, every new thing that they're going to attempt, anything that matters anyway, is going to require a new and different version of themselves. So let me give you an example of that. I'll have a new client come into my schedule, and I'll have them identify their goal, net revenue, profit, whatever it's going to be, whatever they're trying to build. And I will ask them straight up, are you the person here today who can achieve that goal? And some give the correct answer, but other people, sometimes their ego takes over and they say, oh, absolutely, I can achieve that goal. I know I can. But the bottom line is they can't, because every new level that you're going to attempt to achieve is going to require a completely different version of yourself. If you already were the person who could triple your revenue in a year, you would be doing it. All right. So there has to be an awareness of our shortcomings. Mine too. We're all unfathomably ignorant and we have so much to learn. And successful people understand that. So they're willing to commit to new behaviors, new beliefs, new attitudes, and developing the new skills necessary to become the person who can achieve their goals. And the third part of the answer I gave to this client who asked an awesome question is this, that you have to ingrain the belief. I don't care what your other beliefs are. All right. But if you're going to succeed, you've got to have one that I know of. Absolutely have to have it. It has to be inviolable, unshakable. You have to have an unshakable belief that you can learn anything. Obviously, you have to have a willingness to do so, but it starts with a belief that you can learn anything because the world has changed. It's spinning a whole lot faster than it used to. 40, 50 years ago, you could get a job and stay in that same chair for 40, 50 years and they'd take care of it and everything's good. That's not the world anymore. All right. And the fastest to adapt wins. So those are the three elements that I shared with my client. Okay. You're either interested or committed. Right. And if you are committed, you absolutely understand that every big goal you're going to go after is going to require a new version of you. You're only going to go as far as you're willing to change. And the third element is you have to believe you can learn anything. Because to achieve whatever you want to achieve, you're going to have to learn. So that begs the question, why doesn't everybody do it? And the answer to that's really simple, but I'm not particularly comfortable sharing it with you guys because you're a bunch of veterans. So the answer is fear. People don't do it because they're afraid. Every single one of us is at war with our fears. And fear manifests in so many different ways. It manifests as procrastination. It manifests as excuses. It manifests as rationalizations that from afar or even up close on their face appear completely logical. Fear, 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 fear. As a matter of fact, if we hooked you up to a functional magnetic resonance imaging machine and sat you down and introduced anything new to you, anything that interrupted the pattern, anything that was new or different that you hadn't sensed immediately before, your amygdala would spike. That's the gland that controls your fear. It's innate. That's why we're here. That's how we survived. Because the first thing we do when we see something new is our amygdala spikes, we get afraid, and we determine whether the thing can eat us or not. Now, the difference between people who succeed and people who fail is very simply this. They're afraid, they know it, and they do it anyway. Right? That's the difference. Okay. They're afraid, they know it, and they do it anyway. And everybody on this call understands that with your background because I'm going to take a wild guess here. I'm going to guess you were a little bit nervous when you first enlisted. I'm going to guess that the version that you are right now would have been unrecognizable to you on the day that you enlisted. Okay. Every single one of us is at war with our fears. And as you begin this transition, it's okay to accept that. Just understand it and don't let it defeat you. All right. You've got to push through anyway. And that's why Jordana asked me to come speak to you because I know all about fear. And what I want to share with you today is the most powerful tool I've ever encountered in my life, in my business, in my coaching that has helped me overcome fear. And that's the power of perspective. But before I do that, I want to share with you a story. True story. Mother Nature cares about two things. She cares about two things and two things only. Everything else is noise. She cares about survival and reproduction. Now, natural selection is the tool Mother Nature uses to determine who wins the battle of survival and reproduction. That makes sense? All right. Natural selection is the means through which Mother Nature cleanses her gene pool. Now, everybody knows Mother Nature has a bazillion different ways to take you out. But the one we're going to talk about today specifically is called predation, how one animal identifies, tracks, consumes another. All right. Biologists love to study predation for the very, very simple fact that it's Mother Nature in the immediacy. It's immediate. It's right now. You get to see Mother Nature in action as she decides who lives and dies. All right. You can learn a lot from that. All right. Because you get to see who eats who, where, when, how, and most particularly, why. Now, we all learned in grade school that natural selection is predicated on the idea of the survival of the fittest, that if you're old, if you're sick, if you're stupid, well, you're going to have a rough time. Okay. That's what we were taught, that Mother Nature strengthens species by making sure the lion ate the old, the sick, the stupid, so their genes didn't make it into the next generation. All right. But that's not the whole story. And the whole story was discovered quite by accident in Africa. See, biologists were studying how hyenas eat wildebeest. Now, there's something you have to know about wildebeest. It's the most common big game species in Africa, and everybody eats them, including us. And so, for wildebeest to survive, they had to come up with some defense mechanisms. All right. First, they're fast. Second, they're really mean. They've got horns. You get close to them, they can hurt you real bad. All right. But the third and most common and most prevalent and most effective means for their defense is called the confusion effect. They all look the same. All right. Uh, the confusion effect works this way. Large predators lack the neural processing speed to identify and target an individual specimen in a fast moving herd of animals who all look the same. It's too confusing for them. And what we learned was this: we have the same problem. So here the biologists are in Africa, and they're studying how hyenas capture and consume wildebeest. And part of that responsibility required that they track an individual wildebeest to see how it reacted when the hyenas showed up for dinner. Well, we couldn't do it. We're watching this animal that we'll call Sue, and we look away for a second. We can't reacquire Sue. We can't track an individual wildebeest in a fast moving herd. So the biologists came up with a great idea. They jumped in their Jeeps and they went and captured a wildebeest. And for purposes of this illustration, we're going to call her Sue. All right. So they captured Sue. A couple of things you need to know about Sue. She was healthy. Okay. She wasn't old. She wasn't sick. She wasn't stupid. She was the prototypical wildebeest. She was perfectly healthy. So they took Sue and they painted her otherwise black horns all white. All right. And then they released her back into the herd. And Sue ran into the herd and said, "Hey, look at my new white horns." And everything was great. Everything worked fantastic. The biologists could spot Sue from a mile away. They no longer had any trouble tracking an individual wildebeest. Everything was great, right up until they rang the dinner bell. When the hyenas showed up, bam, Sue got killed. All right. Now, apparently, these biologists weren't a particularly astute bunch, so they chalked that up to bad luck. And they jumped in their Jeeps and they went and found another wildebeest to paint up. We'll call him Bob. They painted Bob's horns white, let him loose, same routine. Bob went back to the herd, said, "Hey, look at my white horns. Everything's great," until dinner time. And you guessed it, hyenas showed up and bam, Bob got killed. Okay. The painted wildebeest was killed first time every time, right? And what that is called the oddity effect. Mother Nature selects against looking different from your tribe. Mother Nature says that homogeneity and congruence in appearance, form, and function enhance survivability. So Mother Nature takes you out if you look different. Now, there's a lesson in there somewhere. And I think the lesson is that it's not it's a bad idea to show up looking different. Thank God I'm not that guy, right? Well, it turns out I am that guy. But I got news for you. So are you. Yeah, you guys have white paint all over your horns. All right. Because in the population of the United States, the total number of veterans who are still alive is just short of 7%. The total percentage of persons who currently serve is less than 1%. The total percentage of persons who are making the transition that you're making now is not large. It's well under 1 in 10, which means you stick out. Okay. You stand out. You have painted horns. Your resumes look different. Your backgrounds look different. Your skills are different. Your educations are different. You stand out just like me, which is why I suspect Jordan asked me to talk to you guys, which is great. All right. Because I've been doing this a long time. And I've learned how to handle it. And I want to share that with you today. It's the only way I know how to serve you guys. The other way I'm going to serve you guys is I'm going to be brutally honest. I'm going to tell you exactly what happens. and I'm not going to blow any smoke at you or blue sky it. It's going to be difficult. Okay. But as I've learned in my life, that if you have the proper perspective, you can take any difficulty, any adversity, any challenge, and turn it into an absolute opportunity. And let me explain to you how. So I look different than you. This is phocomelia. It's an incredibly rare genetic anomaly. And I sat down, and I'm not good at math, but I did the math one time and I figured out that I pretty much had a better chance of getting hit by a meteor. Yeah, my brother keeps saying it's bad luck. Um, but in any event, I was born without fingers, without thumbs, and without elbows. Now you see a couple fingers here and you see a thumb. Let me explain how I got those. What I was born with essentially was a flat fused flipper. It looked like an oven mitt. But when they took an x-ray of it, they determined there was a rudimentary bone structure inside. Okay, so these fingers and these thumbs essentially were surgically manufactured. And do you have an intelligence experience? No, I don't. Thanks for asking. No. Anyway, so fortunately, my parents weren't psychopaths. So they declined the doctor's first birthday present suggestion of an immediate bilateral amputation at the shoulders, a brand new shiny set of hooks, and a one-way ticket to a lifetime admission to the institution for the physically infirm. They said no to that. They threw me in a car and they took me to find a surgeon. We lived in North Dakota at the time, and they found that surgeon at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And this guy was a genius. What he did was this. The first thing, he sat me down and he broke my arms and twisted them into a more useful direction. And then he cut apart my flippers into the three fingers. And then they took skin grafts from all over my body and put skin on top of my fingers. And then the last thing that they did was they cut a finger off and they moved it up here to give me an opposable thumb on each side. And it's transformative. And there are several people in the world with phocomelia who didn't have the surgery and they just have an oven mitt. And I've got a full, almost full, functional set of hands that gave me an opportunity at a relatively normal life. And I'm so very, 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 very grateful for that opportunity. But let me just share this with you. It was years of surgeries, followed by years of casts, followed by years of braces, followed by years of rehabilitation. And I tell you what, that's how you build an optimist. Okay, because every single day I woke up, I could do something that I couldn't do the day before. It took me 6 years plus to learn how to button my shirt. It took me about that long to develop the dexterity to tie my shoes, to brush my teeth, take care of myself in the bathroom, to feed myself. It took me a long, long time, and it was a lot of work. But at the end of the day, I achieved complete physical independence. There's nothing I can't do except like five things. I can't snap my fingers. I can't throw a spiral with a football. I can hit you dead in the chest from 20 yards with a football, but it's going to be tumbling end over end. I can't throw a spiral. There's like five things like that don't matter at all. And it was a beautiful thing when I achieved it, when I realized, my God, I beat this thing. I'm physically independent. But what I didn't understand at that time, and I came to learn it later, was this, that achieving physical independence was going to be the easy part. No, it wasn't all easy. All right. I mean, the first time I swung a golf club, for example, it landed in the kitchen. And that wouldn't be particularly notable, except that I was standing in the backyard at the time. It went right through the window. And I once went to buy a car. I felt really bad for the salesman. When you walk in looking like this saying, I want a test drive, I mean, he must have thought he was on candid camera or something. But anyway, I told him I wanted to test drive a Honda Element. Love that car. Really wanted one. And so we went and got it. And I got in the car and I drove out and I took a right out of the dealership and went in a big square, all right-hand turns, down the highway, back around, back into the dealership, got out of the car, loved it. Took 6, I think, perfect right-hand turns. Went inside, stroked a check, grabbed the keys, walked out the door, loved the car. All right. Got in the car, turned right out of the dealership just like before, went down to the light to take my first left-hand turn, and I honked the horn. And I honked the horn because when the way I gripped the wheel and I turned to make my left hand turn, the back of my arm bumped the horn. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I drove around for a few miles and realized that, oh my God, I'm going to honk the horn like 40% of the time I make a left hand turn. So I pulled into a parking lot and I thought to myself, those guys are really cool. They'd probably take this car back, but how fun would it be to drive around honking the horn at everybody? I can't tell you how many friends I made, how many people waved, hand signals of all kinds when I was honking the horn all day long. But I kept that car. And I lost control of a crab leg one time at an all-you-can-eat Chinese buffet in Nashville, Tennessee, and I said that thing flew out of my hands and it helicoptered across the dining area and hit another patron. So, yeah, I've had challenges in achieving complete independence, but nothing compared to the challenge I faced when I realized what lay out there in the real world as I made my transition from my home to adulthood. And well, I'll just show you this way. If you look up the word disabled on thesaurus.com, here's what you're going to find. I printed this out this morning. Here are the synonyms listed on thesaurus.com for the word disabled: handicapped, infirm, paralyzed, weakened, wounded, confined, disarmed, hamstrung, hurt, lame, maimed, sidelined, stalled, wrecked, broken down, decrepit, helpless, incapable, laid up, out of action, out of commission, powerless, run down, worn out, and useless. Yeah, that's not pretty. Imagine, if you will, for just one moment, if that was the list of synonyms listed next to the word female or African American. But that's the list of synonyms for persons with disabilities, and taxonomy demands a label, and that's the label we got, and it is absolutely ruinous. Our society imposes an appalling strain on persons with disabilities right from the word go. The day you're born, you're tattooed a loser, and it follows you throughout your entire life, and it's pervasive. It manifests in every possible conceivable way. I mean, every time I cross the threshold of my door and go out into public, people stare, they mock, they laugh, they point, they make jokes, they say nasty comments. I've actually caused accidents. I was walking down the street one time in Miami, and there was a bicyclist coming the other way, and he got an eyeful of me, and he couldn't stop looking. And he's riding along, and he looked over his shoulder, and bam, right into the back of a parked car. That dude caved in the trunk with his face. I know it's not funny, but damn, that's funny. It's pretty fun to watch. Anyway, at least 2 or 3 times a year, a complete stranger will approach and tell me that if they look like me, they'd kill themselves. At least 2 or 3 times a year, a complete stranger will see me in public and scream at my appearance. My first day of school, I was sent home, and the principal explained to my mother that kids who look like that don't go to school here. And keep in mind, this is 20 years or so after Brown versus Board of Education that made that illegal to do to African Americans. We didn't get our educational independence decades later. I've been asked to leave public places. I've been asked to cover it up. I was asked to leave the beach one day. I went into a restaurant one day, and a woman was sitting there waiting with her family to be seated. And she looked at me and she said, "My God, I'm not going to eat while we're looking at that." And she stood up and walked out. Getting a job was a real challenge. When you walk into a job interview looking like this, yeah, that's a real challenge. I once interviewed over the phone, and the woman offered me a job, and she said, "You're great. You really should bring a friend because we're hiring, and I'm sure your friends are, cool too. Come on down. You got a job." I went down. They hired my friend, and they didn't hire me. And I asked, "What the hell's going on?" And she pulled me into her office, and she said, "Look, I can't hire you. I can't have a client see you." I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Well, what happens if you have to pick up a box or something?" I said, "I'll pick up the box. I'm completely physically capable." And she said, "I'm sorry, I can't hire you." And I had that about a dozen times when I was looking for a job. And dating was interesting as well. I had many ladies laugh at me right in the face, and I was very much alone for a long time. And it was a horrible time in my life because I had no shield against all that pain. And that pain is of a special type because we're sentient creatures. And so I'm lonely and I have a physical yearning for the companionship of other people. Okay. I'm aware of that physical yearning, but there's an echo to that. Okay. And the echo is I'm lonely and I know I'm lonely and I'm likely to always be lonely because I'm not going to grow a new set of arms. So it was extremely painful. And I became well acquainted with fears at that time as well, because we have five universal fears. There's the fear of death, but the next four, oh, that's a toxic cocktail. The cocktail is this: your second greatest fear is fear of mutilation or infection. Well, every single morning I get up, I look in the mirror, I'm looking at mutilation, and all of the other fears cascade from the fact that I'm mutilated. I fear abandonment. I fear loss of autonomy. And our fifth fear is of humiliation and embarrassment. Well, I wear my source of humiliation and embarrassment, my source of rejection, my source of a loss of autonomy, potential loss of autonomy, because if I can't physically perform because of injury or whatever, I know where I'm ending up. You carry that around with you. You eat breakfast with it every day. It's your worst fears, your four of your five worst innate fears realized. And I was about 21 years old when I first became aware that a lot of my dreams were dying. Okay, because we all have five things in our life that really matter. All right. First one's your health. And I'm not healthy. At least I'm perceived as unhealthy. The second one is an intimate relationship. Well, I don't have one of those. I can't get a date. And I'm really not looking forward to the prospect of being alone the rest of my life. And the third one is family and children. And because I can't get an intimate relationship, I'm not going to have kids. And the fourth one's a career. Well, I can't get a job. And the fifth one is friends and social life. And I was drinking all the time. And so that was in jeopardy. And here's what psychologists say. The question becomes, how many of those five legs can you sweep out from under that table before you're in real trouble? And the answer is two. By the time you sweep three of those five legs out from underneath that table, you are a prime candidate for an acute clinical depression. And I was that candidate, except that I hadn't swept two, I hadn't swept three, I'd swept four. I'd swept four of those legs out from the table that supported my life, and I was laying on the ground and chewing on the fifth. And I was growing incredibly resentful and bitter because the whole arrangement seemed just a little bit unfair, because I'd worked so hard to overcome this and become a productive member of society. And no matter what my sacrifice was, it was being rejected in every element of my life. And it dawned on me that I hadn't felt anything but a really cold, hard rain for a lot of years. And I wanted to die. You learn all about irony when you want to blow your brains out, but you realize you can't hold it down. And so I began trying to figure out a different way to die. And then it happened. I learned the greatest lesson of my life. It's funny, I can talk about all the crap that I went through and not lose it. But when I get to when I talk about how I pulled out of it and what saved me, I get a little bit choked up right about now, because it's so damn powerful. I'm so grateful for this experience. Here's what happened. I finally got a job. I finally got a job because it was a blind hire. Saw an advertisement in the newspaper for a bike messenger downtown Miami. I'm like, I got a bike. I got legs. Let's go. So you applied through a mailbox and they responded by telephone. And then you picked up your gear in the same mailbox. And then you put your receipts in another mailbox. I never met anybody from the company. It was a completely blind hire. And so I'm living on top of a restaurant on Miami Beach. I'm riding my bike 8 miles to work every day, pounding out my route 20, 25 miles, riding 8 miles back home, and doing everything I can just to justify the next day. And as it turns out, that job ended up saving my life because I went to work one day and I walked into a building and I got on an elevator and I pushed my button. I put my back to the back of the car and I'm digging through my bag for the envelope and my receipt book. And just as the doors were closing, this little hand came through. And a woman got on the elevator and she pushed her button and she put her back to the side of the car so we were perpendicular and she was staring at me. Mammals can tell when they're being stared at, and I sure as hell can tell I've had it my whole life. And she was staring at me. And so I looked up at her. And usually they look away, but she didn't. She was just smiling at me. And she didn't stop smiling. And then she said 7 words that saved my life. She said, "I bet you lead an interesting life." I'm going to say those again. She said, "I bet you lead an interesting life." And I don't know how I responded. I didn't say anything. I think I just nodded or shrugged or whatever. I said, "Get the hell away from me." I didn't know what to think of it. But the bell rang, the doors opened. It was her floor. She got off. And I never saw her again. Anyway, I'd like to see her again. I went up to my floor, I made my delivery, and I got back on the empty elevator and I started down. And I'm turning that over in my head. And I'm thinking, what the hell? What does that mean? I bet you lead an interesting life. And then it hit me. And I just lost it. I started crying and I staggered out to my bike on the curb and I sat down and I cried for 20 minutes because the pain was all gone, every bit of it. And here's what I learned. And here's the lesson that I'd like to share with you. The lesson is this: if your circumstances won't change, you must. What she taught me on that elevator was my life didn't suck, but that I sucked at life. What she did on that elevator was a crash course in what's called cognitive reframing. Cognitive reframing is where you take repetitive, maladaptive thoughts and you dispute them. And in a 15-second elevator ride, she took my model of the world, she took my snow globe, and she shook it so freaking hard. My whole life, I had come to believe that everything that happened to me because of my arms was painful. It sucked. It was awful. It's unfair. It's terrible. It's the worst, blah, blah, blah. And what I did using that language and having that thought pattern was build myself a prison. And the only way I could escape, it seemed to me, was suicide. And in an instant, she convinced me that it wasn't painful. She convinced me it could be interesting. She totally reframed my experience. What she taught me was this: that if life isn't being fair to you, if you're not getting what you want, if things aren't working out the way you thought they should, you face a binary choice. You can either blame life or you can take a real hard look at yourself. And I'm here to tell you that nobody on this call has the moral right, the authority, or the knowledge to blame life, to condemn life. You just don't have it. What you need to do is look inside your soul and tear it apart piece by piece and put it back together again differently. Try something different. And in a 15-second elevator ride, that's what that lady did to me. She reached into my chest and she grabbed all my pain and she yanked it out and said, "This is interesting." And she stuffed it back in there. And I haven't felt any pain, no matter what people do. Okay. Because I mean, it's not as though after the elevator ride, people weren't assholes. Excuse me. They still are. People still scream at my appearance. had a guy at the gym a couple weeks ago. This guy at the gym comes up to me, and here's what he says. And I get this all the time. They want to say something nice, like I inspire them or whatever. He says to me this. He says, I see what you're doing, and you come in here every day and you do what you do, and I'm thinking to myself that that could have been me, and thank God I'm not you. Now, ordinarily, man, that's not a nice thing to say. But with the mindset I've had for 35 years now, since the woman in the elevator, we had a great conversation. We connected, changed numbers, and he doesn't know that, he said something silly, and I'm okay with it because it doesn't hurt. And it paid immediate dividends. With my new attitude, my new perspective, my new way of looking at my situation, I swear to God, I asked out the next 3,000 women I found. I mean, I random women, just, I bump into somebody on the street and I'd say, were you born in America? And they'd say, yeah, I was. I'd say, are you right-handed? And they'd say, yeah, I am. I'd say, we have so much in common. We really should go out. And they started saying yes. So I started dating, and then I got a job. I got a job because I realized with all my experience that the uncertain mind says no. Okay. So I made it my job to go into interviews and make sure they were comfortable. I'd sit them down and I'd say, look, this isn't contagious. I can do everything you can do, a lot better. I can type like a demon. I got a great work ethic. I'm very, very loyal. I'm smart. I'll do this. I'll do that. And I ended up getting a job. That 15-second elevator ride, that shift in perspective from my life sucks to my life is interesting. Single most powerful thing that ever happened to me. I just took off. I never look back. And I share that with you folks here today for the simple reason that your horns are painted white, just like mine. And I'm not going to BS you. It's rough out there. When you wake up every day and you got 25 rejections in your inbox and you can't get a job and you don't understand how things work and it seems really unfair, and why doesn't my service matter? And why are people treating me like this? And the whole world seems like it's out to just wreck your freaking day. I've been there. And you just need to change your perspective. Okay? You can't condemn life. You need to look at yourself. You need to start over. You need to take a different approach. And it starts with your mindset. And the only way I can honor you guys for your service is just to be honest about it. You got this. But it's going to require a completely new version of you, because the adversity you're going to face is unlike anything you've ever faced before. I've been there, and you can do it. But please, please, please keep in mind that the path forward is a mindset where you're aware of how you're perceiving things and you're manipulating them to write a different story. Because when you get there, when you understand that you control the narrative of your life and all events are neutral and you can define them as you wish, then you understand, okay, how your mind really works. Then you understand you're in control of your emotions. Then you understand that you write your own story. You've already written a great chapter. Keep writing and make the next chapter better. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to share this with you guys. And I'm here for you, okay? I'm going to throw my contact information in wherever I got to throw my contact information. I'd love to connect with you. I'll help you any way I can. If any of you want to talk, if any of you are having a difficult time, I'm a coach. I'm here for you. Thank you very, very much. And if you have questions, I'm going to scream Jordana's name as loud as I can right now, and hopefully she'll appear and she'll help me manipulate whatever I got to manipulate to get to your questions. So thank you. How do I do this, guys? There she is.
I'm like the boogeyman. I appear.
Yeah, you are. So questions.
Don't look like I've got any yet. I just prompted everybody, guys, if you've got questions for Kip, throw them in the Q&A slot over on your right. There's a chat over there. I would love to answer them for you. But Kip, wow, that was amazing.
Hey, I see a question. How fast can you type? I can type faster than you with one finger on each hand. It looks like I'm shooting a bird. I'm not shooting a bird, but I can type like a freaking demon, man. I tell you what, though, how cool was the day that they came out with that talk to text stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I can type great. Not super fast, but I'm pretty darn good at it.
Let's see. We've got a question from Jesse. This is an awesome talk. Is there a recording of you giving this story somewhere that I could share to people that are in your pre-elevator ride shoes? There will be one after this. As of next week, we'll have one hopefully for you. But is there one already out there?
There will be one next week. And if you Google my name, Kip Roth, Roth, you'll pull up a bunch of interviews I did. One or two, I think, where I talked about that elevator ride. God, what I wouldn't give to run into that woman again.
You know, we've got social media now. So with
tell you what, I think it was I was in such a bad place for so long that I've just tried to delete from my memory a lot of that crap. I honestly don't even remember what year it was. Now, I remember the building. I gave a speech in Miami one time, and I visited the building. Sorry.
It's okay. We're real here.
Yeah, I visited the building. She wasn't there. But the elevator was. Whew. Anyway, what's funny about after it happened, I thought that I had gone too far. I thought that I had crossed a line, that I had seized upon a reactive defensive distortion of reality, and I was playing in a sandbox mentally that I was losing it, because how could something be this powerful, right? And so I kept it to myself. I just rode my bike through the streets of Miami with this smile on my face. I mean, I could see colors again. I could hear again. I could taste and smell. I mean, everything came back. And I actually didn't tell my wife about it until we'd been married for 17 years. I kept it completely quiet. So now I'm glad to share it, because it made a bit of a difference in my life.
I've got another question for you. We've got a few coming in. I'm going to try and get to everybody before we have to shut down. All I've gotten is rejection after rejection this year. This is from Douglas. It's deflating. I know that I have to continuously change my perspective, but how? It's challenging.
That's a great question. And please don't think I'm being flippant. Okay. I know all about rejection. I understand it. But here's what you have to understand about it. What you voluntarily endure makes you stronger. Okay. What you voluntarily, when you continue on, you get stronger. The world doesn't get softer. It doesn't get easier. You get stronger. So you've never met a sailor, a good skilled sailor who got that way from calm seas. You've never met anybody who had any character or any strength, who had a super easy life. The two are mutually exclusive. I know it's painful. I know it's hard. All right. I get that. But at the end of the day, keep at it. You're turning yourself into a freaking monster. Okay. Because when you win, and you will win, you will not be recognizable to yourself. You'll be so strong. Stuff that used to bother you, you'll eat that for breakfast. And you know this from your time in the service. You probably were scared to death when you showed up. And look at you now. It's the same thing here. You're making a transition. Stick with it, because every kick to the groin you take, every kick to the groin I've taken, made me stronger. Keep at it, man. And work to get better. Figure out how to tear yourself down and represent yourself. You'll get there. I hope that answered the question. But yeah, rejection and adversity, I looked at as an opportunity that when I'm done blazing through this, I'm going to be a better version of myself. And that's just the truth. No one likes getting kicked in the groin. You got that right. I tell you what. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one more from Christy. What words or methods did you use to convince employers that you can do the job despite your disabilities? How did you get them to open their mind to what is possible versus what isn't possible?
Oh, I was just brutally honest. I walked into interviews and I said, hey, listen, I look different than you. Here's what's going on. It's phocomelia, blah, 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 blah. Here's what it means. It's not contagious. There's nothing I can't do. I just want to make sure that to invite you to ask me any questions you might have about my capabilities, because I want to work for you. And if you're not sure that I can do the job, I'm not going to get the job. And that opened up a dialogue. See, people, they're just afraid. Okay, they've never seen anybody like me. They don't know what to say. When I was as open and honest and forthcoming as that, and invited open dialogue, what happened was they asked me questions. In one interview I had, I think it was like the second interview I had, they brought this. I was in law school, and they brought one of my projects in, and they said, well, let's discuss this brief. And I looked at them and I said, you guys don't want to discuss that brief. You want to discuss, how the hell I got like this. And they said, well, yeah, go ahead. So I told them what happened. And 10 minutes later, we're talking about football. And then later that evening, I met him at a bar. We had beers, and I got the freaking job. So the uncertain mind says no. The uncertain mind says no. So if you're in an interview situation, your horns are painted white. You've got a unique background. You've got unique skill set. They don't understand how that translates to the civilian world. You have to answer that question. Just be honest. Just be open. And because if you don't, you're going to get rejected. All right. And so it's time to get creative and have real conversations with people and answer those questions, create the certainty. I hope that answered that question.
Perfect. I've got one more that I'm going to do before we break. But before I ask this one, Kip, will you be able to join us in the lounge to chat with people, or do you have to run back to work?
I would love to join you guys in the lounge, but I'm not wearing this damn tie. I can tell you that.
That's totally fine. We'll push people that way after this next question. This is our last question for this session. Can you talk about your transition to executive coaching? What advice would you provide to someone exploring this as a second or third career?
Well, I've had three careers, basically. I practiced law. I did some real estate investing, and through real estate investing, I ended up as an executive coach. And my advice for somebody who wants to, the question was, how do you become an executive coach? Pretty much. Was that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So these bookshelves behind me that go all the way across the room. I just read 200 something books on psychology and self-improvement, and I outlined several of them. And I learned the business from the ground up, because one of the cool things about the elevator was when she said, I bet you lead an interesting life. The word interesting turns on your curiosity. Everything became interesting. I just started reading like a fiend. And the next thing you know, I'd read 200 psychology books. And so you need to understand, you need to become an expert, essentially earn a PhD in psychology without going to school. And you apply it to your own life, so it has immediate benefits and rewards, but it's a tremendously rewarding profession. I'm very, very grateful they had the opportunity to get into it. And I'll help you any way I can. So if you want to look me up and call me sometime, again, I'm going to drop my pertinent information wherever you're supposed to drop it, in the feed or whatever. And I welcome anybody to give me a call. I'd love to connect. I'll help you any way I can.
Well, great. Well, Kip, thank you so much. This has been an incredible way to start the morning. I think we're all a little bit jerked back into real life. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask you, after you have de-tied, to head into the lounge to table 3. And anybody who's here who would like to meet Kip one-on-one, would like to ask more personal questions or something not in the general session, please head over to table 3 in the lounge and chat with him briefly. We've got about 10 minutes before the next session. So thank you all for joining us here today. And Kip, thank you so much.
My pleasure, Jordan. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. And thank you for putting on such an awesome event. This is deeply meaningful. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. We'll see y'all in the next session.
All right.